Hello, people of the internet. My name is Ian Altasar, and I'm sitting here today with Donny, and we're doing a bit of a deeper dive or a deeper astrological video, and we're going to talk about psychic gifts and spiritual gifts and spiritual intuitions, I guess, and a lot of that stuff. Hey, Donny, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm actually pretty pumped about this topic. Yeah. I've
It's
gotten that question actually from clients quite a bit. Like, do I actually have what it takes um, to trust my intuition?
Mhm,
Or am I
mhm.
even psychic to begin with? Or, all that. And it just made me wonder about this topic that we're about to do. Because I can roughly pick out a few main indicators which are found to be pretty accurate in pinpointing whether someone has got a psychic gift or some form of intuition. It's really helpful if you have that to navigate your life, I suppose.
Yeah, I just want to add as well, like it's some of these gifts are kind of weird, let's put it that way. And it sometimes it takes like a chart or to know a chart or maybe an astrologer or someone to kind of say to you like, hey, this is what you can do actually, and this is what you can practice, and this is what you can use in your real life. You don't have to, straight away become an astrologer. You can use this in your day-to-day life or work or whatever area you're you know working with or doing things in. Um, let's maybe jump in and then just start with these.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you have for us? The first point.
um, I picked one um, which I've seen. Let's start with I know this position quite intimately, and
Mm-hmm.
I also have seen a lot of people who come to me with this same position, and
Right.
it's Neptune in the fourth, and with when we're talking about spiritual gifts, we need to mention Neptune usually, and Neptune in the fourth. It's a lot to do with one's emotional life and emotional sensitivity and emotional intuitiveness. Um, and I want to talk about this in the, let's say, and I want to add the Capricorn here as well, because a lot of
Okay.
my, yeah, because it's a weird one, and it's a strange one, because um Capricorn, my generation, the kind of millennials and born in the 80s have Neptune in Capricorn, or a lot of them have Neptune in Capricorn. And when it kind of falls into the fourth house and they're together there, especially when we're dealing with Capricorn, is the doubting of that gift is very, very prevalent. Because what Capricorn does a lot is it kind of suppresses, and a lot of these people don't even know that they have any kind of spiritual intuition or gift usually, and it's very often um, someone needs to kind of draw their attention to it and even start to push them towards it, to even for these people to even open up their minds a little bit, or feelings actually in this case, to be able to start feeling other people's emotions, to be able to understand that they're actually picking up a lot from other people. So this is one of the gists of this position is even if you don't have Capricorn there, you can pick up a lot of what other people are feeling internally, inside, and you can start feeling them yourself. And when you're not aware of this, you can even think that these are your feelings and your emotions. So now this is where it gets a little bit tricky, is because there's so much sensitivity in that emotional state and emotional like space. You're picking up so much, and maybe you're even in in workplaces or public spaces. You're picking up a lot of emotions and feelings, so you really need to start, let's say, dealing with this gift and learning about boundaries, and learning what are your emotions, and learning what are your feelings. There are specific meditations you can do, and clearings, let's say, you can do to help you with that. What one of the points with this that I wanted to emphasize really is these people can actually pick up emotions and feelings from others that the other people don't know that they are experiencing. So it can be so suppressed, so deep actually, that the other person doesn't know that they're experiencing this because they are suppressing it. Now, sometimes when you're working with this, or you're like, let's say you're more in tune with this gift already, you're kind of picking up these feelings, and you're saying to the other person, like, okay, so I'm getting this, that you're feeling this, and is everything okay? Or do you want to talk about this? And you can even say these things to other people. And then where it gets difficult is that the other party is like, no, I'm not experiencing this at all. I'm not feeling this. And then what can happen a lot is that person comes back later and says, okay, you were right, you were totally right, because then the emotion has kind of risen up to the surface, or that person, let's say, has put attention to it, and then they can understand, because this gift can be used for to bring out suppressed emotions, suppressed feelings, and that way people can help others with this gift. So it can be a bit of especially younger, it can be a bit of a difficult thing to learn to channel.
Yeah. I'm just kind of thinking about what you said, because you can't leave out Neptune and not talk about the 12th house and also the sign of Pisces, which is all like those kind of energies. And if I were to think about it, like 12th house, Neptune and Pisces energy, it's really on a more generalized level, is where we see the divine or God. And also things that can potentially overwhelm us, like a tsunami, like mythology. Neptune is ruled by Poseidon, right? The god of the seas, and sometimes the seas just don't know there's like a huge storm going, and you just drift to nowhere. And hence the fear and the paranoia that comes along with that. You just don't know where your emotional waters are going, And Neptune also co-rule Pisces, which is like the two fish that's swimming away from each other. So you're almost like, you feel like you're being pulled by a rubber band. So you don't know where to go. Like, that's why it's a mutable sign. You don't know where to turn at times emotionally in a water sign. And hence, like, that feeling of being outside of our span of control can really make people want to deny that Neptunian gifts. They don't want to admit it, or they just like, because if I admit it, it's either they'll be perceived as something which they can be misunderstood for, which is another meaning of Neptune, or that they're setting themselves up for a tall order to overcome, to refine Neptune's gifts, which they may or may not want to take on. But however, if someone actually has the effort to really get down and do the grind work and refine, like, the importance of oneness, which is the meaning of Neptune, that unifying of consciousness, which is also Neptune, and that surrendering, because Neptune, you need to surrender in a lot of ways to its energies in order to merge and reconnect with source. It's also about the time where you're still in the womb's comforts and environment. You're being surrounded by the womb's liquids, and you don't feel that you're a separate entity from another. And hence, this somewhat brings me to, I think one very good point that you mentioned, you don't know if you're feeling what you're feeling or you're feeling what other people are feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's almost like you become a psychic sponge. You just soak in everything. And sometimes it can be so overwhelming that it is so just too much to take. And musicians have a very strong Neptune as well.
Mm-hmm.
So they can escape via that. But you know, how many musicians also delve into the sniffy powder and, you know, all the narcotics and all that, which is very much Neptune 12th house and Pisces energy.
Yeah.
I just also want to add that Neptune in Capricorn, you know, what you mentioned regarding your generation, the millennials.
Mm-hmm.
Capricorn is also a sign of fear. Capricorn is also a sign that needs to prove via material means because it's an earth sign. So until the time where science and spirituality, the linkage can be really proven, those who are born with Neptune in Capricorn cannot see the linkage between these two realms.
For sure, agreed. I would even go as far as to say they're like almost denying it. Like it's almost like, so no. And then when you gradually kind of start proving it materially, like let's say you see something, let's say you see a ghost or see a spirit or an entity, you know,
Right.
then, you know, these Capricornian or Neptunian Capricorn people, you know, they will kind of start believing that you know, these matters, you know, exist, and they are there, and maybe they also have that gift, you know.
But you know, Capricorn is also mastery. You master something, so they can really master that Neptune. Like they can use their intuitive faculties, which is represented by Neptune, and use it in very practical affairs, which is Capricorn. And my God, when I think about those people with Neptune in Capricorn, if they decide to take that route, the soul will really advance so many folds that, you know, their spiritual journey evolution will be so much faster. It will happen very fast for them.
You mean if they start to master it and kind of practice it, and you know that?
I think the first and foremost, they need to acknowledge it. After they acknowledge it, they work hard, Capricorn, right, with it. And then they somehow form some kind of mastery with it. And their soul's evolutionary journey, or at least their spiritual evolution, will happen so fast that it will be, they can do a lot in this life, in one lifetime alone, I would say. Yeah. So what indicators do you have for people though? Just wondering, for like a strong Neptune in the fourth house, any other positions you reckon you'll be pretty strong?
South Node in the 12th is
Okay.
one of these that we can bring in as well.
Okay.
And or maybe we can even start with because you mentioned Pisces, and you mentioned, you know, Pisces and Neptune together,
And 12th house.
12th house as well, and we can bring in 12th house and Pisces moon as well.
Okay.
Because, you know, moon there's a lot to do with feelings and emotions and intuition there. So let's talk a little bit about Pisces and 12th house moon. You know, these people are kind of, you know, very naturally intuitive and very naturally gifted in those other realms and areas and psychic capabilities. And even I would say to the extreme, this is what I've seen in happening in real life, is they can even go out of their bodies quite simply or quite easily, let's say. I think you raised the point of you know, them having no almost feeling or sense to the body. Maybe you can kind of, I remember you when we discussed this, I really enjoyed how you kind of mentioned this part that they almost don't or aren't in that body or feel like they can go, immediately out of it if necessary. I really enjoyed that part. Do you remember that part?
I think so. I think we talked about, like, because the veil, Neptune actually dissolves the veil between parallel dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very easy for someone with a very strong Neptune, if they actually decide to work with it, to experience interdimensional traveling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And
very much that.
yeah, I wanted to add that even this is from what I'm about to share. This is from real life experience with exactly 12th house Pisces moon. Is the person is able to go out of their bodies so spontaneously and even be in those astral realms and be really aware and see what is actually happening in the let's say material reality with their material bodies. So they are in that astral realm or other realm, and they're seeing what is happening.
It's almost like they're out of body and they are observing back from another dimension what they are on this plane, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, that's in my view, this is a gift, that can be used practically to be in that observer mindset and see what is happening on a maybe from a higher perspective. But again, if you don't learn to use these gifts, people even, we can talk about mental illness, but maybe that's a bit of an extreme example, but just, it can be quite unnerving and quite,
You just don't know what to do with it, really.
it can go crazy, basically. I'm kind of tiptoeing it, but, I don't want to scare anybody with this position. But again, you need kind of people who have done this and who have managed to kind of, let's say, learn to control it in a sense that, okay, I'm going out of my body now to, do these things in the astral realms, and then I'm going to come back. Not that it's like I'm sitting outside on the bench and then, you're taking out, and that can, make somebody go crazy.
So it's like you can choose like either one pill. Is like, do you want to absorb what you can see and hear while you're in the astral realm, or you just completely just discard all that and straightway go into fear of the unknown? Yeah, because it can be like a Pandora's box effect. So how about South Node though? Like, because South Node is really about, well, one of the thing, if you talk about evolutionary astrology, it talks about past life gifts. So like South Node in the 12th house can show where we've been, right?
Yeah,
what we've brought with us, what we've brought with us into this incarnation, for better or for worse, that is.
Yeah, I think this is very true. Like, it's hard to, in some shape or form to prove, that it is that we brought something in from past lifetimes, with, regression therapy. I think you can, in some shape or form prove it. But this is my experience with the South Node as well. Like in the 12th is these people have kind of, mastered that area, let's say the spiritual area, the spiritual realm, the other realm areas, and connecting to, entities and ghosts and whatever, spirits. And now in this life, they have that gift very naturally available to them. But what I've seen actually, again, is a bit of a suppression there. It is like even younger people with this position is there's a kind of maybe even a denial of that area there. And then once astrology can kind of, pinpoint, in my opinion, like you can give a little bit of a nudge for the person, maybe you have something here, maybe you can connect to this ghost, then the person starts becoming a little bit open to it. Then they start kind of going towards those areas, maybe meditation groups, maybe they, do their own meditation, maybe they start, feeling and doing those areas. And then once they do that, then those gifts can really start to open. But like one of the things here is to understand that like only focusing on this area in your life where the south node is doesn't usually bode well. And I know this from personal experience, unfortunately, some painful experiences, that I don't recommend people with to focus only. Let's say if you have south node in a 12th, you go only into those dimensions in your kind of all day in deep meditation and kind of only wanted to connect with these. So like use these gifts, but with the north node in the sixth, you need to bring these gifts into kind of everyday areas and help people and heal people even, I would say.
This brings me like to another house, like in the 12th house, the 8th house. Because 12, because like I see 8th house and 12th house, they are both public houses above the ascendant descendant line. And it's what we actually show to the public, or I should say what we don't show to the public. Because 8th house is really like sharing your gifts and talents with another. It's the 7th from the 2nd. And how much do you trust the other person to appreciate your gifts and talents when you tell them that? I know. That's why 8th house in a natal chart is somewhere whereby like it can represent like occult, metaphysical, but also trusting in another. Do you trust another person not to judge you for kind of coming out of the closet with those skills? You know what I mean? And 12th house is where we rather keep things to ourselves.
For sure.
As well.
For sure.
So I would say like if the south node is an 8 and 12, it can both mean that.
Yeah.
But 8th house brings along actually 12th house as well, like some form of mediumistic quality as well.
Totally agree. Now that you mention it, actually, I remembered really, like, again, a practical example from a person, and they actually have north node in the 2nd, like, and the south node in the 8th, and they're very much actually focused on this kind of material creation, possessions, and very, very practical material person. But after kind of, let's say, I would say guiding them, let's say, towards some things. Let's say I'm tooting my own horn here a little bit, but actually they started trusting that they have other positions as well, but that south node in the 8th, they started trusting that intuition and those sensations and feelings and those kind of visions and knowledge that comes from that 8th house. And now I'm seeing their gifts kind of really, like those intuitive gifts, get really precise as well. So I do agree with the 8th house south node as well.
This brings me to another house actually, like besides 8 and 12, the 9th house, because 9th house has got a prophetic kind of quality to it. On some level, it can also bring some kind of mystic quality along with that, because 9th house is where, we're talking about the divine house, so to speak. So there's that, and also some kind of visionary ability, because it's the natural domain of Sagittarius. They can see very far into, like, it's always very future driven. So it's almost like you can see facets of the future of sorts. That's connected to the 9th house energy. So when the south node is in the 9th house, I also can see, like, people can be potentially seers in a family. SEERS, I think, yeah. Yeah, as well.
I wanted to mention, because you mentioned family, I wanted to just really quickly mention if we're talking about Neptune in the 4th as well, this can actually also mean that you have in previous generations you have spiritual gifts. So if, let's say, if you're doubting your gifts, go and talk to your parents, talk to your grandmother, talk to your grandfather. Maybe they can see or talk to you who was the one in your family, and then that can prove to you that you actually have this gift, so you can just allow and be trusting of those more. Yeah, that's what I wanted to.
I mean, fourth house is also about our DNA imprints, right?
Mm.
So the Neptunian energy is imprinted in your DNA lineage. And not only Neptune though, like I've also seen like other outer planets in the fourth house that can really grant some things. Like someone who's a working astrologer came to me for a reading, and I think she has got IC conjunct Uranus. That's why she's an astrologer, because it's like inbred in her, you know what I mean? Like like down to the DNA level. And this divine inspiration and knowledge that comes with Uranus can also be brought into the it's almost like an intuition for her, because I think she's got Uranus and Scorpio conjunct the fourth house cusp.
Okay. So extremely deep, in those.
Extremely deep, very Scorpionic astrologer. Like she says, she loves all the evolutionary Scorpio. She loves all the psychological
Scorpio.
She loves what she does. Really diving deep into the psyche. So yeah, there's that. I'm just wondering as well, how about someone who's okay, this is gonna be like mixing like aspects. How about South Node conjunct Neptune in the 12th house?
Oh, it's like direct connection. It's like direct connection to everything there is, like every other reality. I think it's one of the most intense and, let's say, true.
They have no choice but to work with it.
They're literally so connected to the other realms, they can't avoid it at all. It's like everything just coming to them constantly. Yeah.
I have actually also wrote down some things like Sun or Moon in Pisces, Sun and Moon in the 12th house, or Sun and Moon in aspect to Neptune can also bring you some of the energy as well. Multiple planets in Pisces, like a stellium, or in the 12th house, can be also very psychic. A prominent Neptune. When I say a prominent Neptune, it can be like the chart shape of a bucket, and then Neptune is just the handle sticking out like a sore thumb in the chart. Can also mean that all your energy is poured towards Neptune to develop that. Or it could be Pisces rising.
Oh, that's already a good start, I would say.
Or Neptune conjunct ascendant, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Neptune in the first house in general, I've seen. It brings so much to the person already.
Or Neptune at 29 degrees. The energetic degree. Yeah. What else can I say? Something like, so all this different configurations or variations can mean that you'll be using there's more intuition at your disposal to use it. Whether you want to use it or reject it is choices.
Yeah. And with some of them, it's just going to be a bit more uncomfortable in a way if you don't learn to use them. If you kind of just push it away, in my opinion, because it's really hard to shut it down completely.
Well, if you choose to ignore it, it'll come back in more, potentially self-destructive ways. We all know what Neptune can also mean, right? Escapism and addiction and all of that, because it's
alcohol for sure, Neptune.
Yeah, and also narcotics.
Yeah, don't do that. Learn to meditate instead. That's a bit of a better option there.
I have also noted that someone with a very prominent Chiron, the asteroid Chiron, can also be very, they can also be very intuitive because, you know, we all know Chiron is like the wounded healer archetype, but it's also the maverick. It's the asteroid that talks about connecting bridges, and those bridges can be interdimensional as well, where we talk about Chiron. And so it brings along some kind of spiritual components to Chiron. Since in classical myth, Chiron is the ancient link to the archetype of the healer, hero, bard, and also reminds us of the archaic traditions which linked the mystical with the mundane and the spirit with the body. So you can see how like there's some kind of spiritual, like intuitive, spiritual, and even psychic components to Chiron. And Chiron is also like the archetype of wholeness, being whole again, complete again. Not because it is perfect, it's very wounded, very imperfect, but because it contains and acknowledges both instinctual and divine life as both are essential in component to itself. So when I see someone with a very strong natal Chiron, they're also capable of developing a very strong intuition. This can be like angular Chiron. I've seen that with some of my good friends, really. Or in the water houses, 4th, 8th, and 12th.
Would you agree that it would be also in water signs as well, more kind of like a...
Yeah, like so the water houses or signs like 4th, 8th, 12th, or Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. On a more prophetic visionary level, I also include the 9th and also Chiron in Sagittarius. It can also bring that as well, or that Chiron is an aspect to the luminary sun and moon, or the ascendant lord, or the ascendant, for that matter.
Do you have a preference? What type of aspect there?
The thing about Chiron is that when it's a square, in the earlier part of life, there's so much pain and wound and suffering, potential inner suffering that brings along with that. And then, but I've also seen that the heart aspects, although it can bring more of those things, it can really push you to work with the energy, not exactly by choice. I've also seen like sextiles and trines to Chiron. There's more free will involved. But you know, when something is of a free will in this lifetime, we tend to kind of neglect it.
Totally.
Or take it for granted, really. Take it for granted.
Because the hard aspects really kind of force us. It makes it so uncomfortable that we're kind of forced to start learning and searching and for answers and kind of healing, let's say.
Because the hard aspects really want to manifest something tangible out of it. So when something's really feeling like so uncomfortable that you have to face it, I mean, the squares basically do that, you know what I mean? Chiron conjunct the north node or south node. It can also be really like a gift of developing a potentially very strong intuition as well. Or Chiron at the 29th degree or the anaretic degree of a sign. As well, it can be very prominent. And when, you know, those configurations actually happen for you, you may need to work through some of the wounds first before you can have full access to your intuitive abilities. Otherwise, things can be somewhat like, it can happen outside of your control until then.
Just a question about this, because let's say if a person doesn't work on those wounds first, have you seen it go, let's say, dark? Maybe you know, using those gifts in a kind of dark way, or have you know, just curious.
I've seen people self-destruct, or they're just perpetually going into that negative space, and with that they actually bring in more experiences that emphasize their pain. This can be circumstances, external circumstances, situations, and attract people that hurt them. Be it like they're in an abusive, relationship. This may not be only like, a love relationship, but just attract people that just do you harm.
Yeah.
Until you can take that chironic energy back and really own it within yourself, so that you don't need the external things to bring in to reflect to you that, particularly oppositions to Chiron. I've seen that happen as well.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Also, I've looked at the next one will be interesting, Mercury.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was actually very surprised when you brought it up, but I kind of, it made sense.
Like sense. Mercury, third house, and Gemini, everything that's surrounding that. And, when people think about Mercury, psychic, are you sure?
Yeah.
I think that's your first instinct. But if we think about Mercury, Gemini, and their linkage to the third house in the natural zodiac 12th house wheel, Mercury and Gemini actually talks about the third house. This is, I think, in ancient astrology, this is where the moon functions the best in.
Yeah. High priestess energy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I find like the third house, Mercury, and also Gemini are a crucial part of psychic ability, even more so if you want to be a reader. Like, for example, an astrologer or psychic reader, like people who do tarot and oracle reading, is somewhat tied into the Mercurial aspect as well. I think the reason here is because it's like psychic ability is also a form of communication.
Certainly.
And hence you can't leave out like the Mercurial, Geminian, and also the third house energy. So essentially, when you see a psychic reader, or even connect with spirit yourself, the reader or yourself is actually communicating on many levels. And having like receptive planets in the third house, in aspect to the third house ruler or Mercury or Gemini in the 8th house cusp, Gemini as the 8th house cusp, or 12th house cusp, this can give some kind of ability to clearly communicate with spirit or other realms, so to speak.
A Gemini 8th house cusp, it should be Scorpio ascendant, if I'm correct.
No? Gemini 12th house can also mean they're Cancer rising, most likely.
8th house, 8th house Gemini, I meant.
Oh, 8th house Gemini means they are Scorpio, Scorpio rising, but Gemini 12th house means that they're Cancer rising mostly.
Yeah.
So they are like a Cancer sign.
Already water intuitive. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It ties back to that. And I've seen actually charts of clairvoyance. I've done some little messing around with my astro software. Mm-hmm. And I've seen a lot of clairvoyants actually have Mercury in aspect to Neptune.
Yes.
I see all the face lighting up.
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah. Especially conjunction, I guess. What has stood up for me very much, like Neptune. One of the most prominent ones is Neptune conjunct Mercury, especially if it's again in kind of watery, watery thing. It's like, again, direct messages coming in and very direct communication.
Or Mercury conjuncting a very watery planet, or a planet that traditionally rules a water sign, like Mercury Moon conjunction, Mercury Neptune conjunction, and of course, like Mercury Pluto conjunction.
Not the easiest one to handle, but yes, very, very, very deep messages.
Yeah, I mean, not only conjunction, but like those two planets have an aspect to each other. Mm-hmm. But to bring it back to Mercury Neptune aspects, that can give someone somewhat of a clairvoyant ability, it is also important that to note that there can be a sense of the mind being overwhelmed, because Neptune is the planet that naturally talks about, you know, someone being easily overwhelmed, like in a big sea in a tsunami environment with all the waves crashing in, and you just don't know what to do. It's important to still the mind and do more meditation if you have those things, or if you want to develop those gifts further. There's a preventive care of needing to sit down in meditation more and just still the mind.
Yeah, because I do think when let's say there's something difficult there, again, maybe giving it a harder aspect, then again, you know, it brings up the kind of mental illness side of it, but it's again the about the way you learn to handle it, because there's so much, you know, communication, there's so much kind of even creativity, I would say, in the mind, in the thoughts. You can even, you know, you can even basically start, in my mind, thinking that you're crazy because of those things that are coming in, because, you know, they might seem so very big, you know, very other dimensional, like you can even pick up things here about this person, about that person, you know, and you might even be thinking that you're kind of let's say that you are thinking about these things, or you are generating these things. Actually, most likely you are just picking up on, you know, consciousness and everything there is, you know, outside of there, you know, the 99% behind the veil. So just, you know, learn to kind of channel that energy, learn to meditate, learn to switch it off at times as well. I know it's very difficult. When one of my psychic, let's say, people who have gotten a reading, you know, they taught me a really good trick. It's like before you go to bed, you just use, in your mind, you use a switch. You you imagine that switch, and you go like, you turn it off, and like, that's it. You kind of, you can also, you know, vision like a dark, everything go dark, and you're just going to sleep. But envision that switch and visualize that switch going like off to off position, and then in the morning or during when you're ready to, you know, go at it again, turn it on, you know.
I'm just wondering, like, you know, when it comes to enhancing psychic ability as a whole, someone who's got Mercury, Neptune aspects, more importantly, the heart aspects, stealing the mind and listen becomes so important in terms of spending time alone, not to be with other people, and just have more like dedicated time alone, like in your space, you know. Maybe you can burn some sage or whatever to clear the space out from negative energies, and do your meditation from there. What we've discussed about Mercury, Neptune, if you talk about rulership, Mercury rules the Gemini Virgo axis, Gemini Virgo sign by sign, and Neptune rules Pisces. And we think about how those three signs are interacting in the zodiacal wheel. Gemini is squaring Pisces, and Virgo is opposing Pisces. So there's almost like a natural kind of conundrum or unnaturalness how these two energies work together, because they naturally in the in zodiacal wheel, they're like either opposing or squaring. So it's even more pertinent that you need to train the mind to calm down before you can become receptive to the messages and information that you receive from ethereal sources, and make sense of it all so that you don't get overwhelmed.
I think that part really, what you mentioned there in the end, that really needs practice, like making sense of it all, because it can be really weird at times. You know, why am I hearing this? Maybe there's a voice, maybe there's an image there, maybe there's a thought, you know, why am I thinking this constantly? but just maybe maybe I can add one what I've started to do myself in a kind of a testing way. Again, a bit of
Mhm.
a scientific way. I do use, let's say, both worlds of the invisible and the more natural, or more natural, more material testing world is I put some of these intuitions and thoughts to the test in the real world. So let's say I get an intuition, I get an image, I get some information. I do my best to start using it in some shape or form in the real world to see if I get the result that is portrayed in the information. One of those, I'll just give you a bit of a weird one with this because it kind of ties into it. But it's kind of material as well. It involves
Right.
money as well. But just to illustrate it a little bit. So, like I think about 6 or 7 years ago, I started having dreams about results of things, and that included also sporting events results.
Right.
And then okay, so how can I test it? How can I use it? What can I do with it? And I started betting on those outcomes and those things that I've gotten information on in my dreams, and sometimes intuitively. And it took a little while to kind of understand those images and understand those things, but there was a lot of those moments manifested actually in real life, and I actually made money thanks to that as well. So it's kind of a double whammy of using and testing it out and seeing if these things work. And if you see these things that they're working, literally working, you're given information, then you can start to trust it more. Yeah.
Yeah. Because initially it can be so overwhelming, right?
No, just like
You just don't know what like you're probably seeing like a whole bunch of blur and it's like seemingly um not connected as you would like.
Mhm. Oh yes,
And so you have to
certainly.
figure out how the mind actually functions. And so it brings back to my point of like, you can see how like Mercury rules Gemini and Neptune rules Pisces and they're squaring each other. So it's not like a net, like it's probably one of the more unnatural pairings.
Yeah, for sure, for
By
sure.
zodiacal like aspects to each other, like the square. So you have to really practice it and really work with it, the square aspect between these two signs to really make it work for you. But then the power is really there. Um, the next bit that I found uh, that actually indicates someone can be psychic or intuitive is that they have a aspect configuration called the mystic rectangle.
Mm-hmm.
So the mystic rectangle is like two sets of oppositions, and then they are wrapped with like two sextiles and two trines into a nice rectangle. It's like the base of a pyramid, and this can really that's why it's called the mystic rectangle, because it's one of those rare ones and they have to put the word mystic in front, because this aspect pattern really pulls the energy of separate planets together so that they operate as one cohesive unit, and that in itself is pretty magical. So people who have that, I would say, is one tick. It's not the end all or be all, but they may have some components of psychic intuitive abilities. Maybe one of the planets fall into one of the water houses, fourth,
Mm-hmm.
8, 12, or even a 9th house as well. You can also bring along with that one of the four corners of the rectangle. Or if someone has got a mystic rectangle with Uranus or Neptune involved, that is even more telling. Because like when I think about not only Neptune but also Uranus, it can also bring some kind of psyche, the inner knowing, that almost like uh, that lightning flash of insight,
Mm-hmm.
which is very Uranus.
Yeah.
Neptune brings along more of like the um, like the, what do you call it? It brings in images. you may not know what it is, but it's almost like there's an image flashing, like a picture, like a psychic picture that you can really like see in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
Or it can be playing like a movie in your dreams.
Yeah.
Pluto can also be important as well, because Pluto can really bring in that gut instinct. It's almost like you feel so deeply that it can really come from the bottom of your gut. Like you sense something is not quite right. And you got to take action according to that.
Yes, the sensing, very deep sensing with Pluto.
Very deep sensing.
Because I wouldn't, Neptune for sure, images and things you're seeing
like a movie,
movies,
like a movie.
but Pluto isn't. You're not seeing that much with Pluto, in my opinion. But like the deep,
it's almost like primal instinct.
Yeah, it is.
Like an animalistic instinct, like there's something that you can just sniff from far, you know what I mean?
There's
like,
something wrong and I know it.
Yeah. Yeah. And Uranus is more of like that a eureka moment.
Yeah.
That eureka moment. So if a mystic rectangle has got one or more outer planets, it's even more telling. I think I've seen someone with like all 3 outer planets in a mystic rectangle before, together with some other planets. I think Chiron is also one of them. So the more, what me and Ian are discussing is like, the more takes you have, the more inclination you have. It doesn't mean that, like you open up your chart and check that, oh, I've got Neptune in the 4th, therefore I'm psychic. No, it's more than that.
And yeah, I would agree, and I would say that, let's say, if we take the example of Neptune in the 4th, you need to practice it anyway to kind of be good with it and to understand that gift and how to use it. Just because you have Neptune in the 4th doesn't immediately mean you can do psychic things immediately, but there's a, let's say, a hint that you have that gift, and if you kind of channel it, learn to deal with it, you can perfect it, I guess.
Refine it at least.
Refine it.
Yeah, refine it. Yeah. Another one which I've spotted from those clients I read for is a water grand trine.
Oh yes.
And that means 3 planets are forming a trines to each other into like a closed circuit triangle in a chart, with each planet around 120 degrees apart. And if all the planets are in water, it can really be like a reservoir of psychic energy that you can use. It is at your disposal.
Yeah.
Grand trine with one of the 3 outer planets, be it Uranus, Neptune, or Pluto, it can also mean some kind of intuitive, on some level, psychic energy as well that's involved. But having said that, like grand trines, preferably one or more planets have got aspects like I don't know, like a sextile, or even a square, or even an opposition to something else outside of the triangle of the planets that form the grand trine. Otherwise, you'll just be sitting there like collecting dust.
It's like the trine, everything is a trine, so it comes so easily, it comes so natural. It's like so
and if there's nothing contacting the 3 planets forming the grand trine, it's like just sitting there. Yeah. Everything's fine. Everything's great. I don't have to do anything,
And if you don't have anything there, go see an astrologer. Then an astrologer can force you to deal with these things. Okay, I'm just kidding.
Or at least tell you what is at your disposal, yes. But you may just kind of take it for granted because it just flows seamlessly. That's what the grand trine is about.
That's what I mean.
Hence, yeah. So hence you need some kind of like maybe one of the 3 planets or the more planets have like, some square, some sextiles that can just bring the energy out, you know what I mean? Because otherwise you'll just be locked in that triangle.
Yeah. Use it. Otherwise you won't lose it, but other people other people won't benefit as much from it as they can, and actually you yourself as well, you know, because you can benefit from, you don't have to start, you know, a client based, you know, psychic business immediately. You can just use it in your again in your daily endeavors, in the relationships
Yeah.
and work.
Any more you want to add?
I think we
We talk
covered.
about Pisces. Do you want to talk about Scorpio and Pluto?
We can I think maybe that's a good thing to end this with, because you know, you know, I haven't really met any Scorpios that, let's say, don't have some sort of intuition, psychic gift, but I've met a lot of Scorpios that suppress those. And even one of those examples I have in mind is they actually totally deny this kind of esoteric psychic world entirely, and at the same time they're very 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 intuitive, they're very sensitive actually to everything that goes around them, and they can pick up a lot of what is happening with the emotions and feelings with others, um, and I would even say they can almost like sense danger or sense bullshit really intensely.
Oh, I mean, Pluto, one of the meanings is a bullshit filter.
Well,
So those who've got very prominent Pluto, 8th house or Scorpio, they have very, like, it's almost like a very strong inbuilt, like, BS filter.
but one of the things I really want to mention with this Scorpio energy is that the suppression and the kind of maybe like the putting it away, putting it aside, kind of suppressing it down is so prevalent. I do like, I want to kind of encourage these people because they have so many gifts in those areas and realms, you know, to bring this out a little, because they can use and they can actually, you know, help to transform other people with these gifts if they start to, you know, but first of course they need to go into those their own spaces, their own pain a little bit, which is uncomfortable, I know, to be able to bring that gift. And I kind of want to, you know, encourage you, if you have a strong Scorpio and you're kind of hiding there, you know, Scorpio tends to hide things at times, you know, start
But do you know why
unraveling.
they hide in the first place? Because they don't know what they'll find.
And
It's
yeah,
also on the converse, there's this fear involved. It's like you want to hide because you don't know what you'll find. And what you find, if you decide to go there, may not be, you know, it may be something that will really like disgust you, or, you know, you rather not know. Right?
that's the thing. That's the fear. I think fear of pain that is stopping these people actually, because it can be deep and it can be dark in those realms.
Because if
That
we talk about like Scorpio, Pluto, and the 8th house to some level,
Mhm.
there's so much raw spiritual energy that needs like refinement
Mhm.
as well. Otherwise, you'll just be in its raw form. And hence, Scorpio and Pluto rules crude oil. It's unrefined, you know what I mean? It's just
Mhm.
crude oil. And you need that refinement process. And I think people who are born in the second half of the 20th century, we all have that Neptune sextile Pluto.
Mhm.
And that can actually help us on some level to refine the rawness of Pluto, because Neptune is sextiling it. But sextile means that it is like, if you choose to work with it, you can refine it. Yeah, on many levels. So Pluto aspects to Sun, Moon, Mercury, and even Mars can bring psychic ability are found. Venus, not as much. And Venus, not as much I've seen. Um,
Pluto in
that
the
Pluto,
first. Pluto in the first. We need
yeah,
to mention.
Pluto is the next planet to rise in your natal chart. I do have that, Black Placidus, so I know what I'm talking about. And it's really about the willingness to truly dive deep into one's subconsciousness, um, through some kind of, because when I think about Pluto and Scorpio, right, it really talks about that shamanic spiritual connection. And Pluto and Scorpio rules like the shaman, the medicine man. How you transform, like how do you shape, there's some kind of shape shifting involved when I think about Pluto as well, to let you work through your shadow or darker self within.
I think there's so much especially if we're talking about, first house, that combination with Pluto, or even Scorpio and Pluto in the first. There's so much need to constantly transform who you are, and through those transformations that are not the easiest ones, you learn so much and you unravel so many gifts, unravel so many deeper parts of yourself. Then that from that you're able to kind of guide others and help other people transform and help other people through their own, sometimes shit or crap or painful experiences that need to also be transformed and lived through.
I mean, like, I think the biggest lesson here is to really think about the fact that when you have a Pluto that's very prominent, like in the first house, there must be acknowledgement that purging actually brings you so much more relief than you bargained for.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what that makes you go on that transformative journey as life goes on. And there's so many buried treasure, Pluto, Scorpio, to be unveiled.
Sure.
That at the end of the day, you'll be amazed at yourself for going through with that, even if it's so uncomfortable. And if I were to think about the 8th house energy, I call that the naked and sacred house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Naked is because you feel so vulnerable while you're in that 8th house domain, because it's almost like you're stripped out of nothing. It almost reminds me of the rebirth of Venus in some ways. Venus disappeared, like being burned, being obscured by the sun. And she needs to go down to the underworld to uncover the treasures and all that. There's also like facets of that's why Venus and Pluto are also linked in that way. Not easy, but we get there. Those people who have Venus Pluto heart aspects particularly. Yeah. Because Pluto, what it really teaches us is that to really let go of what no longer serves us, in order to go through that canal of rebirth to come out a totally different person. So initially, there may be some kind of rigid patterning, I call that's involved. And you just break that down as you go along until at the end, you just become a totally, it's like the butterfly metamorphosis process, I would say. Because you're breaking through all those self-limitations like stagnation, which is on one level what Pluto can represent. But then on the flip side of all those stagnation and self-limitation, you get all those buried treasure that you never thought you had.
I think I totally agree. And I would just want to say one little bit of a thing here is that the butterfly is, again, a really nice thing to keep in mind. But when you are in that transformation, it will be really hard to see it. Like the beauty of it, and see the amazingness of the gifts that are emerging, which they will emerge. But the best I can maybe shortly sum it up is to allow your death, allow your figurative death of that identity and whatever it needs
metaphoric
kind of death, and allow that as much as you can, release as much as you can, and surrender as much as you can to whatever it is that is kind of happening or bringing on that transformation. These are the best things, let's say, that have helped me through those transformations, and later on helped me to kind of, I wouldn't be here discussing these things if I hadn't gone through these things and kind of had those butterfly moments in between as well.
Because I think what Pluto also teaches us is to really get deeply into the really like rooted core of your issues.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you can't do it by yourself, you can also like approach like Reiki healers and energy healers, and also psychic readers, because the occupations I just mentioned are not only tied to like, the asteroid Chiron, but they're also tied to Pluto as well, because they do, those jobs I just mentioned actually get deep down into the core of your issues and really reflect to you what's there, like what needs to be seen from your subconscious that needs to come up. And this also, Pluto is also very prevalent for people who do a lot of shadow work, and also a lot of analytics as well. People who do that need to have a very strong Scorpio or Pluto, so to speak, or very strong 8th house. What do you think about Pluto being in Scorpio generation?
I have that.
Okay.
Oh, it's I think that energy is so deep. It's so hard for me to sometimes describe it in words, but like it's it kind of, in my mind, there's so much pain there as well. I just want to be really clear about it. There's so much pain there, and transformation needed there. But the power to do it is actually also there. So it's kind of, both. It's like the pain is there, and the troubles, and
it's like a double-edged sword.
Yeah, basically the both are there, and you need to kind of, and you have that capability to transform whatever it is that you need to transform. And then a very, actually, I want to say this, a very deep part can show itself to you as well. This is, I think, very important. Once you kind of surrender and wrestle in that murkiness and the darkness and the deepness of it all, a very, very deep part of yourself, a very deep and powerful part of yourself, can emerge from those areas.
Yeah. I mean, for people who are born with Pluto in Scorpio, like yourself, like from 1984 to 1996, I would say they're already born into this world with a already developed psychic ability and strong intuition that's embedded in those 12-year periods. But I've also found that Pluto in Sagittarius, the one after you, has that prophetic ability as well, because Sagittarius, right, that prophet kind of energy that's built into the Plutonian realm as a generation. So in those people who are like, born with like Pluto in Scorpio and Sagittarius, you've got that something. And if that Pluto is, okay, one of two things: either it is unexpected, or it is very heavily expected in your chart, you'll be asked to tune into that Plutonian energy a lot in your chart. Yeah.
Oh. I even noticed myself getting very deep and like almost in that term, deep and painful transformational energy whenever we start talking about this Pluto and Scorpio thing.
How about the houses though? Like Pluto it can give like that extra dash of intuition ability.
Do you mean which houses?
Which houses? Yeah.
I would say first, fourth, 8th, 12th. Most likely Most likely
Okay.
3rd and 9th as well.
Yeah.
Just like from the top of my head.
I think those are fair to actually say. But 4th is like you're born with it in your DNA, anyways. So 8th and 12th, 9th and 3rd, maybe there's some kind of developmental work involved. But we'll get there, right? At some point.
It just takes time. It just takes time.
I've got Pluto in the 1st year. I've seen it firsthand how it actually materialized in my life and all the plausible pain that it can bring. Yeah.
I'm laughing.
Can I just?
Sorry. I know exactly what you mean.
How about we end this just with a very short, like, I do have one more point to add.
Yeah.
A very prominent black moon Lilith and or white moon Selena can also mean someone who's very intuitively like gifted as well. Because I'll start with black moon Lilith. Because she herself mythically is very much attuned to the mythical, magical, and the witchiness. So Lilith's intuition can be accessible once the person gets more comfortable within his or her sense of personal power. And so, like, when we talk about a prominent Lilith, like what I mentioned for Chiron earlier, she may be in an angular house in aspect to sun and moon or the ascendant ruler, conjunct either end of the nodal axis, or is somewhat lying at the anaretic or 29th degree of a sign. Lilith in the water sign houses, 4th, 8th, 12th, can also bring some kind of, intuitive ability, or Lilith in Scorpio, Pisces, and Cancer. But there's one sign that we haven't touched on, in which I found that I think this is gonna like surprise you. When I see Lilith or the moon in Virgo, they also can be very intuitively and psychically gifted. Lilith in Virgo can connect to higher vibrations and angels, just like moon in Virgo as well. Because if I think about it, we've talked a lot about 12th house Pisces and Neptune energy, right? But then it's not exactly the easiest to deal with because it can be so easily overwhelming. And so why not we look at the opposite sign of Neptune's domain, which is Pisces, and move into Virgo. If we think about Virgo as a sign, it is an earth sign, so it can be more grounded in its analysis. It's more discerning. It's more critical. So if they've got a whole bunch of things presented to them in a Neptunian or Piscean way, they just kind of, filter out and just kind of, because the Virgo energy is about connecting those things into a cohesive, bigger picture to make it digestible and practical, which is like Virgo energy. And I've seen quite a few
and logical
because it's mercurial driven, but then they are also flexible. They are a mutable earth sign. So it kind of like brings in it's got the necessary like little components to make it one of the moon signs or the Lilith signs that's worth mentioning as well. I'll just touch on briefly about white moon Selena. I'm not talking about the asteroid Selene or Selena. I'm talking about the white moon Selena, which is a mathematical point that's derived from the moon actually. And the black moon Lilith is also derived from the moon via calculation as well. But white moon Selena here is really it's like a kind of protective and assisting presence that lights up the path if you're willing to work with her energies. And hence White Moon Selena is often linked with intuitive abilities, healing, and growth, especially from higher dimensional realms and energies. And these abilities may be accessible and benefit you if you learn to trust and commit yourself to some form of spirituality in life. I think that's all I have.
Solid.
To end on a good note.
Nice.
Because it's like, I think we've covered like houses, planets,
Yeah, I think
aspects,
there's so
shapes,
much.
asteroids, and also mathematical points I just mentioned, you know what I mean? So this topic is like a huge Pandora's box by itself. And the topic, in order to discuss it fully, will take like multiple potential seminars just to cover it adequately. So what we just mentioned here are just some of the things that we've kind of discovered for ourselves. Yeah. Be it within ourselves or, you know, via like clients' charts that we've looked at.
Yeah, this is a lot of like practical earthly, you know, testing and seeing and feeling and transforming, you know. Hope you guys get at least something out of it, and at least something towards your own kind of discovery towards your spiritual gifts and intuitions. And hope you can start using these in real life practical scenarios as well, and then they can benefit your life in some shape or form. And I guess that's it. And if you want kind of like a reading consultation with us, you know, with me or Donny, you know, the links will be in the description below. And hopefully we'll get to do this with Donny and me, and we can do more of these videos. And you know, see you in the next one.
All right.
Bye guys.